Steve, thanks for joining us. We've got some new data out on mishaps from the Air Force. Tell us what we've learned. What are the highlights so far?
So the Air Force last year saw the fewest of the most serious kind of mishap involving manned aircraft in at least a decade. That's good news, but there's kind of an asterisk that goes along with that. Partially because of the coronavirus pandemic, the number of flight hours airmen flew also plunged to its lowest level since at least fiscal 2011 last year. Last year, airmen flew about 1.3 million hours, which is much less than the 1.5 million hours flown in 2019, and far less than the nearly 2 million hours airmen flew in 2011. So that means that the rate of accidents per flight hour actually is kind of ticked up over the last year. What does that mean? Means that several years into the Air Force's effort to try to fix the problem of accidents in manned aircraft, it hasn't shown a whole lot of progress, and it still has a long way left to go.
Steve, now there was a difference in the numbers of the classes of mishaps. What can you tell us about that?
So the most serious mishaps, Class A's and B's, the ones that run from either $600,000 to $2.5 million, or $2.5 million and up, or that result in someone's death, those actually increased. Class C mishaps, the ones that run from 60 grand to 600 grand, those declined a decent bit. That's what's driving the bulk of the Air Force's mishap decline.
Steve, so what is the difference between mishaps? Why is one different than the other?
So the most serious mishaps are the Class A's and the Class B's. Class A's are those that cost at least $2.5 million, result in an aircraft being destroyed, or result in someone's death. Class B's run from $600,000 to $2.5 million, and Class C's run from 60 grand to 600 grand. Now, Class A's and Class B's, those actually increased in the last year. Class C's saw a pretty sizable decrease, which is good, but the fact that we're still seeing more Class A and B mishaps, that's concerning. We talked to Major General John Rauch of the Air Force Safety Center and asked him what may be driving that. He pointed to the fact that the Air Force is bringing on a lot more new aircraft, advanced aircraft such as the F-35.
As we bring on more and more new aircraft, some of the aircraft that are low observable or just new end up with, at least initially, mishaps that otherwise would have been a Class C or Class D on a different aircraft would end up being more expensive. For example, if you have a problem with an F-22 or an F-35 engine, it's more likely to be in the higher category than it would be if it was on an older aircraft. And so we do see some inflation in numbers driven by the increased cost of the components. And obviously the F-35 is one of those platforms that we've got a growing number of those in the inventory.
Another factor making it more expensive is the fact that planes like the F-22, the F-35, those fifth generation fighters, they have low observable stealth coating. And when they get damaged or repairs need to happen, it's very easy for that coating to get damaged again. And that drives up the cost of repairing them.
So that's a lot about cost and repairs. What about the human cost, Steve? What did the data reveal about fatalities over the fiscal year?
So the data showed that in 2020, tragically, the Air Force lost 7 airmen. Most of those were due to fighter crashes, although one, Staff Sergeant Cole Condiff, was lost over the Gulf of Mexico due to a parachute mishap when he was pulled from a C-130. Now, that is lower than the average from the last 5-10 years, which is an improvement, although it is greater than the 2 airmen who were lost in 2019. Major General Rauch pointed out that the 2 airmen lost in 2019 tied for the Air Force's lowest number of deaths ever, but he pointed out even 2 deaths is too many, and there's a lot of work the Air Force needs to do to get that number down to 0.
Our goal has got to be to drive this to 0, realizing that this can be an unforgiving environment we operate in, and so how do we push that to that direction? You know, each accident is investigated, but obviously the ones that have fatalities get investigated and get more attention to try and make sure, you know, whatever happened in that string to try and make recommendations and implement changes so that that doesn't ever happen again. And not that we don't do that in every one, but clearly that gets some of the most attention for each one.
So it sounds like the Air Force knows it still needs some improvement, and a bit of a mixed bag on these numbers. Anything else to add on this, Steve?
Yeah, the Air Force has made it very clear that it knows this is a serious problem. It's trying to correct it, but one thing is clear from this data: it still has a long ways to go.